This episode is about my wedding anthem, Faith, Hope and Love. Let's delve behind the dots. Lots of couples choose the reading from Corinthians 1, chapter 13 for their wedding services. So when I was commissioned by my foster parents to write a piece for their 50th wedding anniversary, I chose to set these words from Corinthians, love is patient, love is kind, and so on. And on the front cover of the publication from the Royal School of Church Music is the very church where I sang as a chorister, which was drawn by a wonderful lay reader when I was growing up who was called John Cooper. And I got permission to print his lovely picture on the front of this piece. In setting these very familiar and wonderful words, I didn't want to complicate them with music. I wanted my music merely to showcase the words even more. I often feel this way when I'm setting biblical texts, that I don't want the music to, in any sense, overshadow the words, if that makes sense, but just to enhance them. When I read the words aloud to myself, it was just very clear to me that C major was the correct key. I always think C major has a lovely homely feel about it, possibly because it's the first key that we learn when we're young, or learn to play the piano in, or learn to sight read in. And it just reminds me of pieces like, that kind of feel. In fact, the left hand part of the opening of my setting is very reminiscent of those sorts of pieces. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not... When I'm writing for specific choirs, I always like to keep in mind what will be nice for them to sing and what will be comfortable. I was lucky with this particular commission because it's a choir I know very well because I sang in it as a child, as a chorister. I know, for example, that the sopranos don't want to sing too high, and I know that the tenors and basses are very thin on the ground, so I decided to amalgamate the tenor and bass line and just have a unison line. So it's sort of practical considerations that I care about as much as the musical setting itself. And when I heard the choir sing it at my foster parents' 50th wedding anniversary service, it was just so lovely to hear that they enjoyed singing it and that the congregation enjoyed listening to it. These things matter to me, maybe also because I tend to approach composing as much from a singer's perspective as I do from a composer's perspective. Anyway, if you want to hear this piece, we recorded it on this disc, Heaven to Earth with London Voices. It's track 9, and it's a really lovely recording. And then when it gets to the stage of, but where there are prophecies, they will cease, where there are tongues, there will be stilled, they will be stilled, I wanted to go into a different key. So I've been in C major most of the way through, and I decided to go into A flat major at this point. It's a really lovely modulation to do. It has a sense of urgency about it and of opening up.
Where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled.
And for we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. That is the section I used to work my way back from A flat major back to C major, because I definitely wanted to be back in the home key for when I was a child. I talked like a child, I thought like a child. Again, I think C major has a childlike quality about it. As I said earlier, possibly because it's the first key that we encounter when we study music. But it just seemed so right then to have a sort of recapitulation. When I was a child, I talked And then it was crying out for moving into the lower voices for when I became
a man, I put the ways of childhood behind.
Then for the faith, hope and love. Faith, hope and love. That, I took away the organ part and just had that a cappella with these deliberate crotchet rests in between each one, just to really mark out this message. The faith, hope and love are the most important, but the greatest of these is love. So I really hope that this short introduction will inspire you to sing my setting in your services. It's very singable, very sight readable, very tuneful, and hopefully something which you will enjoy singing and your congregations will enjoy listening to.